After a stellar year in recruiting on the defensive line, and then after the unfortunate news that Jacob Lacey has to medically retire, which all Oklahoma fans feel for him, we ask ourselves, does this defensive line room have the necessary depth to be able to go compete at the SEC at a high level? We've talked about it for years since the move to the SEC was announced. Oklahoma's got to get better on the defensive line. How do you do it? How do you create that competitive depth there and get a rotation of guys to be able to go compete at the level of Alabama and Georgia and LSU and Auburn and some of the top SEC schools year in and year out? Well, a specific defensive lineman has hit the portal from the University of Indiana by the name of Philip Blidi. And I believe that this is a prospect that Oklahoma really needs to go out there and land. At this point, if you're Todd Bates and you're Brent Venables, you need one or even two more really solid either starters or rotational key pieces that can come in and make an impact and make a difference on this team. Before we dive into it, before we discuss it, I need to hear from y'all. So make sure you're joining the discussion, jumping down in the comments below and giving me your thoughts. Additionally, hey, I want to get to 8,000 subscribers before the month of May. So make sure you guys are subscribed. A lot of you guys that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and hit that like button. Really helps me out. But let's talk about Philip Blidi here, because if you look at what he has done in his career, just as a college football athlete, he's been at Texas Tech. Actually, fun fact, he was teammates with the one and only Reggie Pearson. You heard me right on that, Reggie Pearson. And then he ended up transferring to Indiana. Now, you look at his stats here. Last year was his best career year. 30 total tackles, 10 solos. Didn't have any sacks, but he had a pass breakup. Total in his career, 2.5 sacks. 2022, he had 13 solos, 18 total. He's 295 pounds, 6'3". You want to get guys that are in that 300 plus range to play on the interior. But for a guy like Philip Blidi, he's already almost there. And what I would like about this acquisition is you've heard a lot about what David Stone and Jaden Jackson are doing in these spring practices. The media is absolutely hyped for these guys. And rightfully so, because we talked about those guys being dudes for Oklahoma over the next couple of years. But how nice would it be to be able to bring in a guy like Philip Blidi on the interior who has experience, who has played in the Big Ten, mind you? Like, we're not talking about pulling somebody from a G5 or pulling somebody from the Pac-12 or the ACC. No, we're talking about pulling a guy from the Big Ten, a conference that prides themselves on trench play. You pull a guy like that into your team, maybe he's able to line up next to DeJoun Terry or David Stone, but maybe take some of those snaps off the other guys. Maybe you don't have to utilize your true freshmen as much. Maybe you get to redshirt one of them so you get an extra year of development with them. A guy like Philip Blidi could come into this team and be an absolute leader on that defensive line. And I think that's probably one of the things that we would undersell with the value that Blidi would bring in, because he's a leader on the field, he's a leader off the field. Here's the deal. Oklahoma last year, tackles for loss. This team, okay, let's start off with this. The total defensive ranking last year was 77. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, before Stutzman and all of them got hurt, Oklahoma was like in the high 30s, close to 40s, and then they hung out into like high 40s, 50s for the majority of the year, and then the last couple of games, you slipped backwards into the 70s. It's obviously not where Oklahoma fans expected it. But tackles for loss, sacks. Let's look at how the defensive line played. Obviously, linebacker play can play a little bit into this, but let's just look at this. Oklahoma was number 7 last year in tackles for loss. You were averaging about 7.5 per game. You had 98 tackles for loss, 324 tackle for loss yards. You look at sacks. Oklahoma was tied for number 86. They had, let's see here, 24 sacks, 168 sack yards. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you really want to see more production out of that room. You want to see these defensive linemen live in the backfield. Now, I look at sack numbers and I say those are a little skewed because a lot of teams were max protecting against Oklahoma, and these quarterbacks were getting the ball out of their hands, at an exponentially quick rate because Oklahoma defensive linemen were living in the backfield. And I don't think you're going to see as much of that in the SEC, but you're going to be going up against elite offensive linemen day in and day out. So these defensive linemen have to be ready to go. You got to have the depth because, unfortunately, you're going to have guys later in the season that are banged up. That's just how it works. That's how it is in the SEC because the trench play is so physical. So I look at Oklahoma and I look at a guy like Philip Blidi and I say, it feels like it's a perfect marriage because Philip Blidi is a guy that you would imagine with what he's already done production-wise in college just needs one more year. At least that's what it feels like, right? He just needs 1 year. 1 year with somebody that can develop him, get him one solid last year of good tape, and he's off to the NFL. And then you get to make room for all those new guys. A Nigel Smith, a David Stone, a Jaden Jackson. Because here's the deal. I think Nigel Smith could benefit greatly from maybe only playing 4 games this year, redshirting, and then being a big guy inside for you, but also being a big guy that could play on the outside, right? Being one of those flex defensive linemen. I think Philip Blidi, he sees the need for Oklahoma, and he sees the impact he can make. It's a big name school. You'd go to the SEC, and let's say Philip Blidi comes out here and he spits off another, let's say 35 total tackles. Let's say 20 of them are solo. He gets 2 sacks, a couple pass breakups. That's a stellar year. I think that is enough of a year to put it on tape and to get NFL scouts excited about you. You play in the SEC. It just means more. And we talked about that last week. But guys, I need to hear from y'all, and I need to hear what you guys think about Philip Blidi. He's going to be on campus at the University of Oklahoma for the spring game, along with a couple of other prospects that Oklahoma's heavily chasing on the recruiting trail. So it's going to be a big day for Oklahoma. He'll get a chance to kind of see what Oklahoma does in action. Oklahoma's not getting, well, actually, no, Oklahoma did get moved up, didn't they? No, I think they got moved up is what, I don't know. The dates got moved around so much it's hard to keep up with. But this is exciting, and I want to hear from y'all. So make sure you guys jump in the comments, hit that like, hit the subscribe button. Remember, trying to get to 8,000 subscribers by May. And I want you guys to be part of this community. So YouTube wants you guys to watch some of the videos below, so make sure you guys tune in there as well.